Hey Army, this is Taehyung. Before we start, tell me where you're listening from. Because tonight, I want to talk about something real, something that's been living in my chest for a long time. It's not about fame or music or the stage. It's about love and the painful truth behind why my mom dislikes my girlfriend. It started on a quiet evening in Seoul. The air was heavy with rain, and I had invited my mom to dinner. She doesn't come to the city often anymore. She prefers the quiet life back in Daegu, where the air smells like old memories. But that night, she said yes. I thought it was going to be just another peaceful dinner, like the old days when she'd tell me to eat more, laugh at my messy hair, and talk about family. But instead, it became one of the hardest conversations of my life. The restaurant was small, one of those cozy Korean places with dim lights and soft jazz playing in the background. I had planned everything carefully: her favorite dishes, a warm table by the window, and even a little flower arrangement, because I knew she'd notice it. I wanted it to be perfect, but perfection has a strange way of turning into pressure when your heart is nervous. When she arrived, she smiled, tired but beautiful. Her eyes still had that warmth I grew up with, but I could tell she was holding something inside. We talked about simple things at first: the dogs, the weather, my upcoming projects. Then her tone shifted so gently that I almost didn't catch it. She asked, Taehyung, do you really think she's the one for you? It was a simple question, but it landed like a stone in water, silent at first, then rippling through everything. I froze. My spoon hovered mid-air. I didn't know what to say. Because yes, she was the one. At least that's what my heart kept telling me. My mom smiled softly, but there was worry behind it. She's beautiful, she said, and I know she makes you smile, but something in my heart, it feels uneasy. That's when I realized this wasn't about my girlfriend, it was about fear. The kind of fear a mother feels when her son begins to build a new world that she might not belong to. She wasn't trying to control me, she was trying to protect me, even if it hurt me. After that night, I went home and sat in silence for hours. The city lights outside my window looked blurry, like someone had painted over them with fog. I kept hearing her voice in my head. Do you really think she's the one? And I asked myself the same question, not because I doubted my love, but because I wanted to understand my mom's pain. People think love is simple, like two hearts meeting halfway. But when you grow up, you realize love is also about boundaries. It's about learning how to love without losing yourself and how to listen without surrendering your truth. That night, I learned that honesty isn't a loud speech, it's a quiet boundary. And sometimes that boundary hurts. A few days later, I talked to Jimin. He's always the first person I go to when I feel emotionally lost. He listened quietly, then said something that stayed with me. Hyung, mom's love in a different language. You hear it as worry, but they mean it as love. You just need to translate it. That line broke me a little, because he was right. My mom wasn't rejecting my girlfriend, she was just afraid of being left behind. She feared love would take me somewhere she couldn't follow. The more I thought about it, the more I saw how much of her life she had poured into me. Every night she waited up while I practiced. Every prayer she whispered when I was touring the world. Every headline she read proud but terrified. To her, I wasn't V from BTS. I was still her son, the little boy who ran to her with scraped knees and messy hair. So when she saw someone new standing next to me, she wasn't just seeing a girlfriend. She was seeing change, and change can be scary when love has been your entire world. That realization softened something inside me. I stopped being angry and started being curious. Instead of asking, why can't she accept my girlfriend? I asked, what is she afraid of losing? And the answer was simple, me. One night I called her. We didn't talk about the girlfriend. We talked about small things again, like how she missed my cooking and how she wanted me to visit soon. But before we hung up, I said quietly, Mom, I love you, and I love her too. There was silence for a moment. Then she whispered, I know. I'm just learning how to love her through you. I'll never forget that because it was the first time I realized love isn't about choosing sides. It's about holding space for both worlds to exist without breaking either one. Later that week, I told the guys about what happened. Namjoon leaned back in his chair and said, that's the hardest part of growing up. Learning that love and peace don't always live in the same house. Yoongi added, sometimes peace is just understanding someone's chaos. And Hobi laughed, well, at least your mom didn't ask if she can join your next date. We all laughed, but deep down, I knew each of them had faced their own versions of that same conversation with family, with friends, with themselves. Love, in its truest form, asks us to stay patient when everything feels misunderstood. And that's what I'm learning every day, to hold on gently, even when it hurts. Because real love doesn't demand you to choose, it asks you to grow. Morning came like a careful apology that week. The rain had stopped and the world felt lighter. I realized that maybe, just maybe, my mom didn't dislike my girlfriend after all. She was just protecting the part of me that she's loved since the beginning, the part that's still her son. And that's the painful truth. Sometimes the people who love us the most are the ones who don't know how to show it the way we expect. But if we listen closely between the words, we'll find that love was never missing, it was just waiting to be understood. If you've been listening since the first part, you already know how quiet that kind of pain can be when someone you love, someone who raised you, looks at the person you love and can't quite smile the same way. Tonight, I want to tell you about the night I finally spoke my truth to my mom. It wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no tears flying across the room. It was quiet, painfully quiet, like two hearts trying to find each other through a wall built by time and fear. It had been almost a month since that dinner. I'd kept myself busy with work, recordings, and travel, but no matter how loud the world became, there was a silence following me home every night. You know that kind of silence that feels like it's listening to your thoughts? That's what it was. Every night, I'd sit by the window in my apartment, watching the city lights move like stars that fell too low, and I'd wonder, when did love become something I had to defend? One evening, after a long rehearsal, I was sitting with Namjoon in the studio. He noticed the way I was lost in my own head. Still thinking about your mom? He asked. I nodded. He leaned back in his chair, thoughtful as always. You know, sometimes we try so hard to make our parents understand us that we forget to show them who we've become. Maybe she doesn't dislike your girlfriend. Taehyung. Maybe she just doesn't recognize the version of you that loves her. That hit me hard because it was true. I had changed. The boy who used to seek approval for every decision had become a man who followed his heart quietly, even when it confused people. And maybe my mom wasn't angry. Maybe she was just trying to catch up with the new me. That night, I made a decision. I would visit her, not to argue, not to prove anything, but to talk, truly talk. When I arrived home in Daegu a few days later, the air felt thick with memories. The same streets, the same scent of old coffee shops, the same quiet river where I used to walk my dog. Everything felt smaller except for my heart, which felt too big for my chest. I knocked on the door and she opened it, her eyes widening in surprise. Taehyung, you didn't tell me you were coming. I smiled. I wanted to surprise you. We sat down in the living room where the walls were still filled with my old photos from my trainee days to my first concert. It felt like sitting with time itself. She poured tea, and for a while, we just listened to the sound of the boiling kettle. Then I said, Mom, I need to tell you something, not as your son, but as a person. Her eyes softened. Okay, I took a breath. You always taught me to love honestly, to never play with someone's heart. That's what I'm doing. I love her, not because she's perfect, but because she makes me better. She makes me quieter. She makes me listen. And when I'm with her, I feel like I'm home. For a moment, she said nothing. Her fingers rested on her teacup, trembling just a little. Then she whispered, I know you love her, Taehyung, but I'm scared. You live in a world that eats people alive. I see how tired you come home, how people talk, how the internet twists everything. I don't want someone to love you for the wrong reasons. Her words pierced straight through me, not because they were harsh, but because they came from fear, not hate. I moved closer and said quietly, I used to think that too. But Mom, she's seen me without the lights. She's seen me when I'm not V. She knows how quiet I can be. She knows how sometimes, even when I'm surrounded by people, I feel alone. And she doesn't run away from that. She looked at me then, eyes filled with something between pride and pain. Do you really believe she'll protect your heart? Yes, I said simply, but I also believe I can protect hers. There was silence again, but this time it didn't feel heavy. It felt like the kind of silence that holds space for truth, for love, for understanding. She sighed. You're not my little boy anymore, are you? I smiled. I'll always be your boy, Mom. But I'm also a man who wants to love like you taught me fully, sincerely, even when it's hard. That's when something shifted between us. She reached across the table, held my hand, and said softly, Then show me who she really is, not the version from the headlines, the one you love. And in that small moment, something healed. It wasn't complete healing, never happens all at once, but I saw it, the first crack of light in the wall between us. That evening, I took her to the rooftop of our house, the place where I used to stargaze as a kid. The sky was clear, the kind of night where every star looked close enough to touch. She asked quietly, Does she love the sky as much as you do? She does, I said, but she's more like the earth. She keeps me grounded. My mom smiled at that, a real, warm smile that felt like a sigh after years of worry. Then, maybe, she said, the earth and the sky can find a way to love each other. It wasn't approval, not yet, but it was peace, and that peace was enough for me that night. Later, when I went back to Seoul, I texted my girlfriend. I told her she doesn't hate you, she's just learning to understand you. And she replied, then I'll wait for her heart, just like I waited for yours. Sometimes love isn't about changing someone's mind. It's about giving them enough time to see the truth on their own. That night, I realized that love doesn't just connect two people, it connects generations. And if you're patient enough, love teaches even the hardest hearts how to soften again. When I lay in bed later, I thought about something Namjoon once said. Family love is not always gentle. Sometimes it breaks you so it can rebuild you stronger. And I understood. Because that night, my mom didn't just meet her son again, she met the man he had become. If you've been following the story, you already know how hard it was for me to balance two kinds of love, the kind that raised me and the kind that found me. But love doesn't live in private forever. Not when your life is lived under 1,000 flashing lights with cameras that see more than you wish they did. And one day, no matter how careful I tried to be, the world found out about her. It started like it always does with whispers. Photos that looked innocent enough. A shared coffee cup, a glance too long, a hand almost touching mine in a reflection I didn't even notice. And then, overnight, it turned into headlines. Who is she? V's secret relationship exposed. Fans react to Taehyung's mystery woman. I still remember waking up that morning. My phone was vibrating endlessly, lighting up with messages, mentions, notifications, and missed calls. I scrolled through the chaos, my heart pounding. Her face was everywhere blurry, unflattering, taken from angles no one should ever have to see themselves from. And under each picture, thousands of comments. Some supportive, most not. The kind that doesn't just criticize, it cuts. Why her? She's not even that pretty. She's just using him. She's going to ruin his career. It's strange how quickly love can turn into defense. One day, you're holding hands in peace. The next, you're holding your breath, wondering how something so soft became a battlefield. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to protect her with everything I had. Post something, say something, fight for her. But another part of me knew that silence was the only real shield I could give her. Because once you speak, you feed the fire. And I didn't want her name burned in it. I called her that morning. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice was calm, too calm. Hey, she said. Hey, I whispered. Are you okay? There was a pause. Then she laughed softly, that kind of laugh people use to hide that they've been crying. I knew this might happen one day, she said. I just didn't expect it to feel so loud. I made that word loud, it echoed in my mind. Because that's exactly what fame is. It's loud. Even when you're quiet, it's loud. Even when you don't post, don't speak, don't breathe, people fill in the silence for you. For the next few days, it was chaos. My schedule went on as usual, rehearsals, recordings, interviews, but inside I was somewhere else. Every camera flash felt like lightning. Every crowd cheer felt like thunder. And in the middle of it, there was her trying to stay unseen while the world turned her into a story. One evening, I found myself alone in the studio. The others had gone home and the room was dark, except for the soft glow from the mixer lights. I started playing a melody, something slow, heavy, fragile. It wasn't a song, it was just a feeling that needed somewhere to live. And as I played, I felt tears fall. Not because I was sad, but because I was exhausted from loving in silence. A few days later, I went to visit my mom again. She opened the door before I even knocked. I saw the news, she said, her tone unreadable. I braced myself for disappointment or worry or anger. But she just looked at me long and quiet before saying, "Is she holding up okay?" I didn't expect that. I nodded slowly. "She's trying." "Then make sure she doesn't feel alone," she said. "You know how the world can be. You know how people can twist things. If you love her, you stand beside her, not in front of her, not behind her, beside her." It was the kind of advice only a mother could give, stern, but wrapped in love. For the first time, I saw not fear in her eyes, but understanding. Maybe she had realized that the woman she once disliked was the same woman now standing quietly through a storm for her son. And that kind of loyalty changes things. Later that night, I sat in my car outside her house listening to the rain. I thought about how love, when real, isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it's messy, loud, and painful, but it's also brave. And that bravery is what makes it worth it. Back in Seoul, my girlfriend and I decided to take a break from the noise. No social media, no news, no schedules for a while. We went somewhere quiet, far from the city, far from the headlines. We didn't talk much, we just existed, watched the sunrise, cooked simple meals, walked without hiding. And for the first time in weeks, I felt peace again. She looked at me one morning as the light came through the curtains and said, "Do you ever regret it? Us, I mean." I shook my head. "Never. I just wish the world loved quietly too." There's something pure about love that doesn't need to be proven. Something sacred about two people choosing to stay, even when the world tries to pull them apart. And that's what we did. We stayed. Not loudly, not defiantly, just faithfully. When I came back to Seoul, I wrote a few lines in my journal. They said, "Love doesn't need an audience, it just needs endurance." And maybe that's what this part of my life was meant to teach me, that love isn't about who believes in you, but about who stays when belief becomes difficult. Weeks later, things calmed down. The world moved on, as it always does. New stories replaced ours. New scandals, new headlines, new noise. But in that silence that followed, I found something precious: perspective. Sometimes the universe doesn't test your love by making things easy. It tests it by seeing if it can survive the noise. And ours did, quietly, completely. That night, before I fell asleep, I got a message from my mom. It said, "Tell her I hope she's doing well, and tell her I'm sorry for judging what I didn't understand." I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Then I smiled, because that was it, the moment I had been waiting for. Not approval, not permission, just understanding. And sometimes that's the greatest kind of love a parent can give. I've always believed that love isn't about being together all the time. It's about feeling close even when you're apart. But sometimes distance doesn't just test love, it redefines it. And in this part of my story, distance became our language. After the world found out about her, everything changed quietly. No official statements, no denials, no confirmations, just silence. That's how the industry works. When things get too loud, the safest thing to do is to disappear. And so we did. I went back to work, concerts, shoots, rehearsals. Every day was scheduled down to the minute. Wake up at 5 a.m., travel, rehearse, perform, smile, repeat. And somewhere between airports and interviews, I tried to breathe. But the truth is, I missed her every single day. We texted less, not because we wanted to, but because it was safer that way. Every word could be screenshotted, every emoji could be misinterpreted, every moment could be taken out of context. So we became careful. Our love became keener, smaller, hidden in plain sight. A simple good morning became a whole conversation. A photo of coffee meant I'm thinking of you. A song recommendation meant I miss you. We learn to speak through small things, invisible things. But silence can be heavy. It doesn't just protect, it also isolates. And some nights, after long practices, I'd come home to my empty apartment and just stare at the ceiling, wondering if she was thinking the same thing, if she was tired or lonely, or questioning if this kind of love was worth it. One night, I finally called her. It was late, maybe 2 a.m. She picked up after a few rings, her voice groggy but warm. Taehyung, yeah, I said softly. I couldn't sleep. Me neither. There was silence after that, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that feels like a hug. Then she said something that stayed with me. Do you think love can survive distance forever? I didn't know what to say. Because love can survive distance, but it changes. It becomes a memory you hold, a promise you whisper, a song you replay. It's still love, just quieter. I told her, maybe love doesn't survive distance, maybe it learns to live inside it. She smiled at that. I could hear it in her voice. That's so you, she said. You always make sadness sound beautiful. For a while, that was enough. But the longer the silence lasted, the heavier it became. She was getting messages too from strangers online, from people who thought they knew her story. Some were cruel, others just curious. She didn't tell me at first, but one day she broke down. I feel like I'm disappearing, she said. I can't go out without hearing whispers. I can't post without seeing comments. I don't even feel like myself anymore. I wanted to hold her, to tell her it would all be okay, but I couldn't even see her that day. I was halfway across the world. That night, after our call ended, I sat on the hotel balcony overlooking a city full of lights, thousands of them, like stars that never sleep. And I realized how strange it is to be surrounded by people, yet feel completely alone. It's one of the hardest parts of fame, the illusion of closeness. Everyone sees you, but very few actually know you. So I wrote her a letter, not an email, not a message, an actual handwritten letter. I poured everything into it, every thought, every apology, every promise I hadn't said out loud. I told her that I didn't want her to feel small just because the world was watching. That she was more than the rumors, more than the noise. And that no matter how far I went, she was always the calm in my storm. When I came back to Korea weeks later, we met quietly in a park at night. the kind of place no one really noticed us. She was wearing a hoodie and mask, like me. When I saw her, I felt something inside me break, not from sadness but relief. Because even though distance had made us quiet, seeing her reminded me why I endured it. She didn't say anything at first. She just walked up to me and hugged me tightly, desperately, like she was holding onto something that was slipping away. I missed you, she whispered. I know, I said. I missed you too. For a while, we just stood there, not caring about the cold or the cameras or the world. Just two people who had been separated by everything but love. Before we said goodbye that night, she handed me something, a small piece of paper. I wrote you something too, she said. Later that night, when I opened it, I saw one simple line. No matter how far you go, I'll always meet you in the silence. I think that was the moment I realized something. Love doesn't disappear with distance. It transforms. It hides in memories, in music, in small reminders of what once was and still is. Months passed like that. The world eventually stopped caring. The news moved on, and we quietly started finding our rhythm again. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't constant, but it was real. I once heard someone say, distance is just love's way of proving itself. And maybe that's true, because after everything, the rumors, the silence, the distance, we were still here. Maybe not every day, not every moment, but still here. Sometimes love doesn't need to be loud to be strong. Sometimes it just needs to survive quietly. And ours did. Hey Army, it's Taehyung. If you've ever waited for two worlds to finally collide, the person you love and the person who raised you, you know how terrifying that can be. For years, I imagined that meeting over and over again in my head. Sometimes it ended with smiles, sometimes with tears. But I never really knew what would happen until that night. The night my mother finally met her. It was right after one of our concerts in Seoul. The stadium was still echoing in my mind, the sound of thousands of voices singing back every word. It's a feeling I can't describe, something between heaven and heartbreak. Because even when the lights are blinding and the cheers are deafening, there's always one quiet thought in my heart. Who do I go home to after this? That night, when I got back to my apartment, I saw a message from my mom. I think I'm ready to meet her. I just stared at my phone for a few minutes, not sure if I was reading it right. For so long, I had waited for her to say those words, and when she finally did, I didn't even know how to react. Excitement, fear, relief, it all hit me at once. I replied, "Are you sure, Mom?" And she said, "I want to understand what you see in her." That was enough. We decided to meet quietly, just the three of us, at a small traditional restaurant in Hannam-dong. No cameras, no staff, no one who would recognize us. It was the kind of place my mom loved: old wooden tables, soft lighting, the faint sound of rain outside. I got there early, too nervous to eat, too anxious to sit still. When my girlfriend arrived, she looked beautiful but tense. Her hands were shaking when she greeted me. "What if she doesn't like me?" she whispered. I smiled. "She already likes you more than before. That's a start." Then my mom walked in. She looked calm, composed, but I could see in her eyes she was nervous too. I stood up immediately. Mom, I said softly, this is her. For a second, everything was still. No one spoke. Just three people standing in the middle of something that had taken years to happen. Then my mom smiled, small, hesitant, but real. It's nice to finally meet you, she said. My girlfriend bowed respectfully. It's an honor, ma'am. Thank you for agreeing to see me. We sat down, and for the first few minutes, the only sound was the rain tapping against the window. It felt fragile, like one wrong word could shatter the entire moment. But slowly they began to talk. My mom asked about her family, her work, her hobbies, and my girlfriend, nervous but honest, answered everything with sincerity. She talked about how we met, how hard it had been to keep things private, how much she admired my mom for raising me to be kind. And I just sat there, listening, watching the two most important people in my life trying to find a bridge between their hearts. At one point, my mom said, "You must know it's not easy for me. I've watched my son get hurt by this world more times than I can count. I was afraid you'd be another reason." My girlfriend looked down, then back up, and said something I'll never forget. "I understand, ma'am, but I don't want to be another reason for his pain. I want to be the one who helps him heal." There was silence again. My mom just looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw something soften in her eyes. She reached across the table and said, "That's all I ever wanted for him." And just like that, something broke inside me. All the tension, all the fear, all the years of quiet misunderstanding gone. I didn't even realize I was crying until my mom handed me a tissue and said, "You cried too easily, just like your father." We all laughed, and that laughter felt like the sound of peace. Dinner went on for hours. They talked about everything: food, art, travel, childhood memories. By the end of the night, my mom said, "Next time, come to Daegu together. I'll cook for you both." On the drive home, my girlfriend held my hand the whole way. She didn't say anything, but I could feel the relief in her grip, like she was finally breathing again after years of holding her breath. When we reached her place, she turned to me and said quietly, "Your mom is incredible." I smiled. "She thinks the same about you now." Later that night, I called my mom. I thanked her not just for meeting her, but for opening her heart again. She said, "I saw the way she looks at you, Taehyung. That's the same way your father used to look at me. You can't fake that kind of love." And that was it. The approval I'd been chasing wasn't in words, it was in that quiet acceptance, that invisible shift that said, "I trust you to choose your own heart." When I hung up, I sat by the window and watched the rain fall again. It hit me then sometimes love isn't a fight to win. It's a bridge to build. And that night, my mom and my girlfriend built one piece by piece with honesty and time. Now, when I think about that dinner, I don't remember the fear or the nerves. I remember my mom's smile, the warmth in her eyes, and the way the rain outside made everything feel calm, like the universe was quietly saying, "It's okay now." That night changed everything, not just for them, but for me too, because I finally realized that love, real love, doesn't need to choose sides. It finds a way to make everyone belong. Hey, Army, thank you for staying with me through every part of this story. It means more than I can say. Sometimes, sharing pieces of our heart feels scary, but knowing you're here, listening quietly makes it feel safe. Maybe that's what connection really is. Not loud applause, not constant words, but quiet understanding between people who feel the same things. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that love, no matter how complicated, is always worth choosing. Even when it hurts, even when it changes us. Because through love, we grow, we forgive, and we learn what it means to be human. So tonight, as you rest, I hope you remember this. You are loved even in silence. You are understood even when you can't explain yourself. And you are never alone in your healing. Thank you for listening to my story, for giving it a home in your heart. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you find peace in love, in family, and in yourself. This was Taehyung. Good night, Army. Sleep well, dream softly, and remember, love always finds its way back home.